The #1 risk factor for several diseases, including cancer and Alzheimer's, is aging. So naturally, there's a big push to figure out how to slow it down beyond just for cosmetic reasons. Joining us to break it down is Dr. Sabrina Fabi. Dr. Fabi, thanks for being here.
Nice to see you, Jen.
All right, so let's talk about what's happening in terms of research in the field of anti-aging in an effort to try to stem some of these diseases.
Right, well, we're seeing that people are living longer and longer. And scientists aren't necessarily trying to keep people living longer. They're trying to make sure that when people do live longer, it's an increase in quality of life, which people are calling health span as opposed to lifespan. And so in an effort to make sure that people are living longer but healthier, they're looking at drugs that we've actually already been prescribing for many years to see if there's an actual way that it can prevent Alzheimer's, heart disease, as well as cancer, which are 3 leading causes of increased both mortality and morbidity in patients.
Interesting.
One of these drugs is called Metformin. This is a drug we've been giving patients with diabetes for many years, and now it's actually proving to show an increase in health span.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, and you sort of started to answer it there, any drugs already showing existing promise in this field? Kind of interesting you bring up the diabetes thing, treating it for one thing, but it could be used for something else.
Yeah, that's sometimes how the best discoveries actually come about. Something that we're using for one thing applies to something else, and if anything, has a better effect on something else. So Metformin is something we've been prescribing for over 60 years. And in one study, what we found was that patients that were taking it outlived people that were not on Metformin by 15 years. And so patients that are generally diabetic are unhealthy baseline, and so for them to actually outlive counterparts without the disease and without being on the medication was actually substantial. So that's promising, and the thought is that it actually works at the level of the cell that processes sugars, and it does something so that there's actually a decrease in inflammation at the level of the cell, potentially because we know that aging is an inflammatory process. Beyond Metformin, there's actually another drug called rapamycin that's also affecting the same level of the cell. We've also been using this drug for many years. It's meant to be a chemotherapy drug, so it's a little bit more toxic generally on cells, but again, has been showing to increase lifespan and health span in many patients.
Interesting. Okay, what about roadblocks for anti-aging? I mean, anytime you talk about clinical trials, we're talking about years and years. What do you anticipate here? Right.
What's hard here is that you'd have to follow patients for 20, 50 years to actually prove that overall, when they do live longer, they also have a better life quality than people that aren't on the medication. And there's many variables at play when patients live or when you follow people for 30 to 50 years, such as accidents that may occur, other medical morbidities that may confound what we call data. And so then you can't necessarily say that it's the drug that's making someone live or be better in those years than someone else. So that's always tough. And so that's the reason why we're relying on these animal studies to really guide us. And what we know is that sometimes what looks good in animals doesn't necessarily translate in human research.
Yeah, really interesting topic. Dr. Fabi, always great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jen.